2012 APWA Congress Expo floor. My name is Emilie Barta, and we are going to have some fun the next 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to learn how to pronounce a word. Little did you know that this was going to be spelling and pronunciation today. But sitting next to me is Brian Amundson, and he is the Director of Public Works with the City of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And he is going to talk to all of us about mental speed bumps, the use of a Woonerf for traffic calming. Brian, I think I'm saying this wrong. How do you pronounce this word?
Well, it comes from the Dutch, and it's, if you think of it as V-U-N-E-F, Woonerf.
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 There you go.
So it's spelled Woonerf, but it's pronounced Woonerf.
Woonerf.
All right. Let me know, did you know what this word meant, or did you know how to pronounce this word? I would love to hear from you so that I'm not the only one that's mispronouncing words today. Go ahead and go to that lower left-hand corner of your screen, click on that Q&A button, and let us know if you're familiar with a Woonerf, if you had heard of this concept, if you've implemented one in your community or you've seen one in your community, and let me know if you knew how to pronounce it or if you just learned from Brian as well. So, okay, now that we know how to say Woonerf, what is this?
Well, it's really more of a concept of how you go about dealing with traffic and the combination of traffic, cars, trucks, vehicles, pedestrians, motorists, bicyclists, everybody on a street, and how they share a particular area. So it's more of a concept than it is a particular type of design.
So it's a concept.
Right.
And I'm understanding that there's a book
There
revolving around this concept that might have had an impact in your life. Talk to us about this.
Well, there is. And I guess if you think of the concept that traffic is a social problem, it's not a design problem. And if you take that initiative, we were involved several years ago, probably 10 years ago, in a very controversial type project that I actually read the book, Mental Speed Bumps, and how to tame traffic using different types of techniques. And one of the things they said you should do is go sit in the middle of the street and see what happens. And so I did that.
Wait, you're joking, right? I mean, you
No.
physically went into a piece of pavement or asphalt and you sat down in the middle of a street, which, oh, by the way, there are cars on the street.
There were.
And?
I did. About we had our third public information meeting after two very stymied type meetings and very controversial back and forth, some people opposed, some in favor. And I read the book and said, I'm going to try that. So I took my lawn chair and the newspaper and I went and sat in the middle of the street about an hour before before our first meeting.
So obviously this went successful since you're now sitting here next to me. Once you decided to sit in the middle of the street, and ladies and gentlemen, this is live and this is truly a conversation because obviously I had no idea that we were going to be talking about Brian putting his life in danger by sitting in the middle of a street with oncoming traffic, which obviously went well, but we are not suggesting that you should do this at home. Please do not try this at home.
Well, actually, I am suggesting you do that.
No. Okay, so what? Once you sat in the middle of the street, what happened?
Well, motorists acted differently.
I would hope so.
You know, think of it this way. When a car goes down the street, we have people who get upset. So what do? You shake your fist, you get mad, and people race on by. If you stood at the side of the street and you waved at somebody and you smiled at them, you think they might react different?
I would hope so.
Well, they do.
Okay, good.
So there's three kind of concepts with mental speed bumps. You need some intrigue, you need some uncertainty, and you need some humor. And if you do all three of those type of things, you can get some mental speed bumps and you can calm traffic.
Okay, so you were sitting in the middle of the street,
right,
and you were
reading
the newspaper,
right,
waving at people, and what was their response?
Couple things. First of all, they would look at you, they'd make eye contact with you, they'd slow down and want to know what's going on. They were intrigued by someone sitting in the middle of the street. There was no sign that said, the stupid, dumb public works director, warning, is sitting in the middle of the street in front of you. Drove down the road, saw a person sitting in the street, and slowed down, and were intrigued by the fact that you were there.
Okay. So what did you take away from this?
I took away from it that what I read in the book is really true.
Which is?
That if you do create some intrigue and you create some things for folks, you can change how they drive. I grew up, I'm an old, as you can tell by my hair, I'm not a young engineer. I'm a traditionalist. I grew up with, this is how you design things, this is how you build things. You make things certain, you make them bigger. But that's not necessarily the way you deal with traffic calming, primarily in residential areas, but in other areas as well.
Okay, so how did you take this information and this experiment and apply it to the city of Eau Claire?
Well, actually what was interesting on that particular meeting, I had some of the residents actually sitting on the lawn beside me watching that happen. And so they were able to see what motorists did and how they reacted to that. We took that and then converted that into a design project that rebuilt about a 500-foot section of roadway using many of the concepts of a Woonerf and trying to put some mental speed bumps into what we were doing.
So, I mean, what specifically were your mental speed bumps that you implemented?
Well, one of the interesting things is we actually put a street light right in the middle of the road. And the primary contact, the first comments I got after we finished the project was, you put a street light right in the middle of the road, why'd you do, people are going to run into it. Well, it's been there for almost a year and a half now and no one's run into the street light.
And it's right in the middle of the road.
Well, the first thing they say to me, there's a street light in the middle of the road, and I said, how do you know that? And he said, well, I saw it.
I saw it.
Right.
So, I mean, you're really encouraging people to take a moment to view and their surroundings.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Get engaged in driving. What we've done in engineering so much is we've made it so consistent, so uncertain, that there is no decision making that has to be made by the motorist, and that's problematic, I think. You think the discussions over the years that we've had about roundabouts. One of the reasons roundabouts I think are a little bit safer is that people have to drive them. You have to pay attention to what's going on. You just don't have a signal say now go, and so that's what needs to happen. There's another book I encourage everybody to read, and I had read that about the same time. It's called Traffic: What It Says About Us, Why We Drive the Way We Do, and What It Says About Us as a Society. And every traffic engineer in the country should be reading that book.
Well, it sounds like you really mixed things up, because think about it. How many times do you take the same route day after day, over and over? You have it memorized, you have muscle memory, and then all of a sudden you get there and you don't remember your journey because it's something that you do every single day.
I have two stories about that.
Okay.
And one of them is I had a this is probably 40 years ago, when I was a young engineer growing up. I had a street superintendent who told me, he said, never go back to City Hall the same way you left. Mm-hmm. And he's absolutely right. I've done that from the beginning. And you will see different things as you go back. The other ones, this is about 10 years ago, I was at a neighborhood meeting where there were parents very concerned about a school crossing. And there was a mother who told me that we needed to put up school crossing signs, and we needed to put those up right away because someone was going to be hurt. And I scratched my head and I said, I think those signs are already there. And so after the meeting, I was convinced the signs were there. After the meeting, I drove by there and I stopped and I looked, and sure enough, she drove by later and she stopped and said, I'm really embarrassed. I drive that street every day, at least 2 to 4 times a day, and I never realized that those pedestrian school crossing signs were there.
Hence a mental speed bump.
Right.
So if you have any questions about mental speed bumps or about slowing down and noticing your surroundings or about Woonerfs, go ahead and go to the lower left-hand corner of your screen, click on that Q&A button and submit a question, and it looks like somebody has. So Dana, what do we've got?
We actually, Emily, we had 2 questions come in for Brian. The first is, have emergency services personnel bought into this idea, and how has that gone? And then second is, when this book was written and when you were sitting in the middle of the street, what was the rate of texters texting on their smart cell phones while driving?
About this crazy public works director sitting in the middle of the seat?
No, actually, the way people are texting on their phones now, is this still a good idea?
That's a good question. Go to the first question had to do with, what was the first one again?
Dana, could you please repeat the first question? Thanks.
The first question was?
Sure. The first question is emergency.
Oh, emergency
personnel.
vehicles. Actually, that was one of the impetus, because we had a very controversial on this piece was close the road, don't close the road, keep it open for emergency vehicles, keep it open for other kinds of vehicles for us in the neighborhood. And the final design that we ended up with is very open for emergency vehicles, so it's absolutely they have bought into it completely and it's no problem whatsoever. In terms of the texting, I'm not sure I understood exactly the question, but I don't know that it was, when I was sitting in the middle of the road, that there was any texting going on. I was not aware that actually happened. Distracted driving is a problem, but I think if you create some intrigue and some interest and uncertainty, people will start to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on.
So it sounds like creating this intrigue and this interest and mixing things up a little bit would actually force people to pay more attention to the road and not slip into those bad habits like texting while driving because they know the route.
Let me give you an example of how people act. When you walk up to a stranger's house, or you go in a stranger's house, and you go in the front door, and there are shoes laying on the front door, what do you normally do?
If it's a stranger's house and I see a pair of shoes?
Somebody you know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter, either stranger, either way. You walk into a house, there's a pair of shoes on the floor. It's several pairs of shoes right at the front door. What do you normally do?
Walk over them?
You take your shoes off? Most people will.
Interesting.
Most people, if you walk into a house that you've not been in before, and there are shoes laying at the front door, you'll probably take your shoes off. If they're not, you probably won't. That's a little bit what you're trying to do with these type of mental speed bumps, is say, look, this is a shared zone where we're going to share bicycles, pedestrians, and cars. We're going to share this area together. So we're going to put some shoes in there that make you take your, if you're a car, you can come in here, but you got to act a little bit different. So we're going to make you take your shoes off when you walk into this space. And that's really kind of the whole concept of what we're trying to accomplish with these mental speed bumps.
All right, so what we're trying to accomplish here is to make all of this make sense. So if you have any more questions, we have just a few more minutes with Brian. Be sure to go to that lower left-hand corner of your screen, click that Q&A button and submit your question. And of course, everyone, whether you're here in Anaheim or you're joining us from your hometown, be sure to get involved in the conversation on Twitter via hashtag APWA Expo. And it looks like someone has submitted a question. Thank you.
We do. We have another question. Paul and Pam, thank you for watching and participating today. But they submitted similar questions, Brian, about the city attorney and the insurance company and the legal department. How do they react to these kinds of ideas, especially when you talked about putting the stoplight in the middle of the road?
Well, the street light in the middle of the road really, we've not done anything that's illegal. We've done nothing that has caused any legal problems at all. I suspect there's always that chance that something could happen and could occur, and the legal folks would say you shouldn't have done that. One of the interesting things we had to do was with signs. We built this originally with no signs, and it wasn't within a day or 2 days of us having this open that we were asked to put up, well, how do we act in here? What do we do? We did give in and put in a sign that said you have to drive 15 miles per hour and put up some no parking signs, but that's it. There's no other signs to telling you what you have to do.
So you're leaving it up to the driver to anticipate and act appropriately.
Well, the driver, the pedestrian, the bicyclist, the person walking or running down that street, all those people are interacting together in a shared zone.
But we really appreciate you interacting with us and talking to us about shared zones. Now, for everyone here in Anaheim, Brian is giving a session giving a session on Wednesday, which is the 29th of August at 8:30 a.m. entitled Mental Speed Bumps, Use of a Woonerf for Traffic Calming, and that is in room 304C. For everyone joining us from home, it sounds like Brian recommends 2 books so that you can get more information about this topic, and remind us what those books were. Pull this one up and let us see it.
One of them is Mental Speed Bumps,
Hold it up.
The Smarter Way to Tame Traffic, and the other is called Traffic, simply that's the name of the book, Traffic, Why We Drive the Way We Do and What It Says About Us as a Society.
Wonderful. Well, Brian, we appreciate you letting us know what this crazy public works director of Eau Claire, Wisconsin says about creating mental speed bumps. Thank you for spending some time with us. And thank you so very much for joining us. Be sure to come back at 11:45 Pacific time, where we are going to talk about protecting trees during public construction projects with Jennifer Gulick from the Davie Resource Group. Thank you so very much, Brian. We'll see you back here at 11:45 a.m. Pacific time.